So let's explore the three elements of leveling up in Dungeons and Dragons. And as a new player, we often focus on the character sheet, the attributes. How much experience do you have? What hit dice do you roll? How many more hit points for the level? Do you have any new abilities, spells, feats? And in focusing on this perspective, as you advance as a player, as you gain levels, you want to make sure these two other areas that are a little bit more challenging to navigate don't fall behind, because otherwise what's going to happen is as you move into the higher mid levels, around level 5 to 8, and the challenge ratings really increase, and the encounters that the Dungeon Master is able to throw at you, as those increase, you want to make sure that your character is not falling behind, because it's going to be a little bit challenging to catch up. Not that it's impossible, but keeping in mind these three functions every time you level up. Now, yes, the hard attributes. How many hit points? Roll those hit points. Do you get to bump ability scores? What ability scores are you going to bump? What direction are you going to go? Depending on the addition of Dungeons & Dragons, are you going to take another class or a subclass, dual class, multi-class? Second to that is your equipment. There is this idea that as you adventure, I use the term gold piece equivalent. If we take your share of the gold after every encounter, if we take items and goods, magic items, potions, gems, kegs of wine, sell them, convert them to gold, you get a share of that as a player. Rewards from a quest. Recover the Heartstone, get some extra gold from the realm, 500 gold pieces each. The idea is at every level, you're going to have a pool of gold. You need to use that to make sure your gear keeps pace. A perfect example, if you've got a +1 sword and you're a level 1, level 2, level 3 fighter, that's pretty good. If you've upgraded your banded mail to plate mail, that's pretty good. You don't want to be level 8 and still rocking that +1 sword. You want it to have a couple of additional modifiers behind it, maybe sonic, maybe frost, maybe ice. You need to spend that gold to increase your gear. Another great example, playing a wizard or a magic user class, this idea that I need to be acquiring spells. Now, lots of dungeon masters handle this differently, and we've talked about this idea of as a spellcaster, my spells, yes, absolutely are important. But just like a fighter has the primary weapon, but if they get disarmed or something happens, they have a secondary. As a magic user, even sorcerers, I want to make sure I've got some backup, some wands, a staff, a rod, magic items that can utilize that. At the lower levels, having a wand of magic missiles is fine, but I don't want to find myself at level 8 or 10 and still have that same wand. I want to make sure I have something like fireball or lightning bolt. So there's this idea that you're going to utilize your gold to keep pace with your gear. Now, some classes, of course, are more gear dependent. No right or wrong with this, but like a fighter is very dependent on the gear, as opposed to another martial class like a monk, where the gear is important, but it goes in a different direction and you're able to focus on specific directions. Makes it a little bit easier. The third aspect to keep in mind as you level up: the resources of the world itself. Now, different dungeon masters will handle this differently. Is this a campaign you're playing in? And I define a campaign as multiple D&D adventures linked together to tell a story. But we also see this with standalone adventures. There'll be sub-stories, subplots. You're going out, adventuring, doing what you have to do, but other stuff, whatever that stuff is, other stuff is happening at the same time, real time. So you want to be developing your contacts within the context of that world. If you're a rogue, being a part of the Thieves Guild, directing some goods to the Thieves Guild. If you're a paladin, making that tithe to the Church of Helm. If you're a fighter, checking in with the Fighters Guild, developing contacts, developing relationships with NPCs. Essentially, Dungeons and Dragons networking. So as you approach the higher challenge level ratings, you can go to these NPCs and you can utilize those resources to unlock role-playing, R-O-L-E versus R-O-L-L, making sure that you're developing those. Because if you're not, and different DMs handle this differently, you don't want to arrive at like level 7, level 8, and you have no contacts in Hillsfar. You want to just make sure you have that. So the points to keep in mind as you level up, the character sheet, the hard attributes. Yes, if you're a barbarian rolling for hit points and you roll that 1, sad face. If you're a wizard, D4, okay. I mean, I'd like to roll a 4 or 3, but a 1 or 2, it is what it is. Selecting your feats, selecting your abilities, increasing your attributes. But don't neglect your gear, your class gear, and don't neglect those contacts.